Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. Be sure to leave your comments. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. Coach O was at Rotary Club today in Baton Rouge. That is pretty symbolic. It's the last public media availability for the LSU football coach before fall camp starts. It's been that way for years and years and years, is that Rotary Club appearance. So Ed Orgeron was there today. He nailed it. He was loose. He was energetic. He was gregarious. He was absolutely at his best. It was a bit of a contrast from a week ago where he felt, I thought, uncomfortable at SEC media days. Today, he was awesome. Like, that's the guy who, when Ed Orgeron is that guy, he has a really good feeling about his team. That's not the Ed Orgeron we saw last year. The guy we saw today is not the Ed Orgeron we saw in 2017 when he knew pressure was building. That's the guy we saw when he was confident in his leadership in 2018. That's the guy we saw who knew they were going to dump truck everybody in 2019. Like, he was really good, really, really good today. That's encouraging when Ed has that feeling, because I'm telling you, that was not the case a year ago. And you've heard me say this, and I'm going to continue to hammer it. A lot of people didn't like it when I was saying it a lot last year. But you're starting to understand it now because everyone is acknowledging it. The culture last year was terrible, and it showed on the field. And it was in large part due to the coaches' inability to communicate with their players. And so you had this giant fracture between coaches and players and coaches and coaches, and it was bad. It was very bad. There's no other way to say it. It was as bad as I've ever seen it at LSU. But today had a very different feeling. This whole offseason has had a very different feeling. But Ed Orgeron underscored it again. Like, if you're actually listening with that context to what he said, when he talked today at the Rotary Club about the process he went through to hire new coaches, listen to what he said about that process.
I wanted coaches that can communicate with our players. So I interviewed every one of them personally. And I just said, hey, I'm a football player. I'm an LSU football player. I didn't tell them that, and I'm going to ask them questions. And I want to see how they relate to me. And all 6 of these guys rated A+.
Can you play the very beginning of that again? Like, listen to how emphatic he is saying this.
I wanted coaches that can communicate with our players.
I wanted coaches that could communicate with our players. You know what they didn't have last year? Coaches that could communicate with the players. The thing that I will let's hear what he said about quarterback today. A little different than what he said at media days last week. But this surprised. Can you play 7, please, Muse? This surprised me when he was talking about the offensive line. Give a listen.
I do believe that the offensive line is going to be our strength. Now, we have to develop some depth. We got some young guys. Watch out for Garrett Dellinger, a young mid-year transfer from Michigan. Came with us in the spring. I think he can play guard or tackle. Time for Anthony Bradford, who's probably one of the most talented offensive linemen that we have. He's got to lose a little weight. He's in the best shape he's been in. He can play guard or tackle. Those 2 guys are the 2 guys that I'm expecting to get some playing time behind our experienced starting offensive line.
Dellinger and Bradford. Dellinger coming in, obviously, as a freshman. Bradford, the guy Orgeron was talking up a lot last year in the preseason, who we didn't really see that manifest, but maybe this could be his shot. There is a giant amount of pressure on Brad Davis, the new offensive line coach, because, listen, man, last week at media days, we had Austin Decula sitting with us, and he said it. Like, they knew they weren't good last year, and they got to improve. They objectively were not a good unit last year. And now the head coach is going into the season saying, we feel like that's the strength of the team, which would be an incredible transformation. But here was O on Brad Davis, the new offensive line coach.
This guy from Baton Rouge that kept on popping up. In fact, he was a pain in the behind in recruiting. He was at other schools. He was always trying to take guys from Baton Rouge. I said, you know what? If he's trying to take my guys, I'm going to go back and get him. And we had a chance. He was at Arkansas, one of the top offensive line coaches in the country, Brad Davis. So 3 outstanding offensive coaches.
It's going to be interesting to see what Brad Davis does with that unit. Like, I am skeptical, okay? I'm skeptical about the offensive line. I I need to see it. You know what I've said all offseason. Just because you have guys returning that weren't good a year ago doesn't mean you're automatically better. Now, I look at that line and I go, Deculus has played a ton of football. Ed Ingram, I think, has the potential with a giant season to race up draft boards. Like, I think he's kind of in the Trey Turner mold. I'm not saying he's going to be Trey Turner, but like he's kind of that guy. He's that type of player. Giant question at left tackle now. Obviously, we hope Cam Wire can do the job. Chasen Hines is a bull, man. He's good enough to play as a freshman. Let's see if he can elevate his play this year. And then Liam Shanahan, after having a year in the SEC under his belt, if he can improve. But those are a lot of question marks. But man, if that offensive line is the strength of your team, that makes it so much easier for whoever is the quarterback, because then you could turn around and hand the ball off to whoever is the running back and be somewhat of a ground and pound team while your passing game develops with a young receiving core, young tight end group, and a quarterback that has started a max of 3 games, if it's Myles Brennan, or if it's Max Johnson, 2 games. Anyway, here was Ed Orgeron on the quarterback position going into camp.
I really believe we have 2 championship quarterbacks, 3 possibly when Garrett gets a little old. Max Johnson and Myles Brennan. It's a toss-up. It's going to go all the way down to the wire, probably 1 week before we play UCLA. We're going to decide who is the starting quarterback. I told him it's competition in everything we do. The one thing I do like about Myles is when he came in last year, there was a lot of question marks about Myles. I thought he played great. I thought he did fantastic. He played good enough for us to win every one of those games. It wasn't his fault, okay? And then Max Johnson, as a freshman, Max waits his turn. TJ goes in. Max gets his turn. And as a freshman, goes win in the swamp and goes beat Ole Miss. And there's only one quarterback. And I told him, guys, there's only one quarterback right now at LSU that's 2-0. His name is Max Johnson. So let's see who's the best man. Whoever wins, we're going to be in great shape.
2 interesting things. One, he reiterated what he said last week, that we have 2 championship quarterbacks. And he also said that they'll make the decision 1 week before the UCLA game. Now, that is a variation from the past, where, if you remember, back when Joe Burrow came in, they cut down reps a couple weeks into camp, and that's when you saw Justin McMillan and Lowell Narcisse transfer out, because ultimately they had to pick. They had to pare down the reps so your starter could get the reps. Now, you look at this and you say, okay, are they going to take this with these 2 guys all the way up to game week? And it sounds there like that's what they're planning to do, which would be a variation from what they've done in the past. But it certainly does seem like it's going to be an open competition. The contrast to what he said a week ago was it'll be a competition unless they just know who the better player is, and then they'll just play that guy, which makes you go, are they leaning one way already? Jake Peetz wants the RPO game as part of what he does. If that's the case, Max Johnson's your guy, because Max can run the RPO game. That's not really in Myles Brennan's DNA. But if you're going to go grade reps and see who does it better, let's see if the veteran guy can win the job and hold off the younger guy. Tigers will be on the practice field starting next week. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.